Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm Rockin' Robbie Billups, and it's time for the weekly comic book review. That's right everybody, thanks for checking out the video. I am Rockin' Robbie Billups. This is the weekly comic book review. It's the show where I read a lot of comic books and I'll let you know what I thought about them. But I do want to invite you to like this video, share this video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It really helps us out. But we always start with the pick of the week, and this week's pick of the week, Flashpoint Beyond, issue number 5. Not a light week like it was last week. However, most of the books this week were just kind of okay for me, but I really enjoyed most of the stuff I got from DC. At the top of that list is Flashpoint Beyond. I've been enjoying this book. So the Flashpoint reality has been recreated, and Thomas Wayne finds himself placed in a world that shouldn't exist. So there's that mystery, how that comes about. But in the midst of all of that, there's this mystery that's developing in the actual world of Flashpoint that Thomas Wayne has to respond to, even though he doesn't really quite want to take the responsibility for it because he's just trying to wipe out this world again, right? And then at the very beginning of this issue, it is slightly annoying because in a way they kind of spoil Dark Crisis and its ending, but then it goes into this whole explanation of DC cosmology and how it's been evolving. We're talking about the metaverse and the omniverse and the multiverse, but also hyperspace or hypertime, and how that's separate from crises in space or the crises in time like 0 Hour and Convergence and things like that. I really like that kind of stuff. I eat it up, but I love that even in the midst of this crazy exploration of the divine continuum and the mega cosmology of the DC universe, it's just telling a really great character-driven story that's also got some fascinating ideas and concepts and great action, artwork, dynamic, really cool stuff. I'm loving this series. The penultimate issue sings, so it makes the pick of the week. Then we got Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths, issue number 4, because they've added the On Infinite Earths, just in case we didn't know this is an official Crisis event. I really like issue number 4, but this is what I was saying on Sunday night's Rockin' Robbie Live for the DC sneak peek. I'm enjoying this, and usually 4 issues out of a 7-issue Crisis event, a lot of big, bombastic, crazy, reality-shattering things has happened. Not so much so here. This has been very much focused on character. It's very much been focused on legacy. So I really like this kind of approach to a Crisis book, but I am waiting for things to really kick up. But some things get set off in this issue, which makes it seem like the final 3 issues of the series are going to be majorly bonkers wild. We shall see, but overall, still enjoying Dark Crisis. Then we got Batman 127. Chip Zdarsky's doing a great job on Batman so far. 3 issues in, I am beyond sold. First of all, the artwork by Jorge Jimenez is absolutely amazing. You know, you hear me say things like dynamic and kinetic and charged a lot, especially when it comes to Jorge Jimenez. The artwork and the coloring, aided by Tomu Mori there, is just absolutely amazing. This new figure, Failsafe, it's basically Batman's plan in case Batman goes rogue. He's built this supremely advanced robot that's going to like take him out. It takes out the Bat family super quick, and he's had to unlock the Batman of Zura and R to try to help solve this, and Tim's like caught in the middle of all this crazy chaoticness, and I'm absolutely loving it. Then you got the backup story, which is also written by Zdarsky. It's about Catwoman, but it's about her kind of following her investigation of the death of Oswald Cobblepot. That reaches a conclusion that I rather like. So this was also a backup story over these previous 3 issues that I've rather enjoyed. So Zdarsky's doing a great job there. Sword of Azrael, issue number 2. I love this book. It's written by Dan Watters. Dan Watters is a really fantastic, imaginative, and deeply resonating writer, at least to me. I really love his work. It can be very complex, it can be challenging in theme and in substance, but it's just always rewarding for me. Sword of Azrael, I was kind of worried. I was like, is Dan Watters really going to give it his all? It's just Azrael, right? No, Dan Waters is giving it his all, getting into the psychology of the code of the Order of St. Dumas has put into Jean-Paul Valley, bringing up the past, respecting and honoring it, but doing something different and unique with it, and kind of adding to the mythology of Azrael, and doing a really great job of the artwork. I wasn't completely sold on that first issue, but it has completely won me over here, because the moments where this really needs to ramp up in emotion or in action, the artwork perfectly is able to shift and adapt to the appropriate tone. Sword of Azrael, I'm loving it. Then we got the new champion of Shazam, issue number 2. I'm loving this book too. So it's focusing in on Mary Marvel. Shazam is like, I don't know, gone, and he doesn't have his power anymore, and there's only enough power to give one of the family the power, so they give it to Mary Marvel right when she's trying to start out a new life at a new college, a fresh start. Reality comes crashing back in. Her parents, her foster parents, get kidnapped. She has to go back home, take care of everybody. But there's a little bit of resentment from some of the family because she's got the power, and it used to be shared amongst them. But man, this is a really great book. The voice of the character rings true. It never feels overly done or anything like that. And the artwork by Doc Shaner is absolute perfection. I absolutely love this book. 4-issue series, 2 issues in. I'm sold. Poison Ivy number 4 is kind of a mixed bag for me. There are elements of this book that I love, and there are elements of this book that I kind of hate. I don't like that they're really treading this fine line of Poison Ivy being a murderous villain, and at the same time being someone who we're supposed to sympathize and be compelled by. So it's not quite striking that balance, because I think that's an odd balance to do. You either do one or the other. And when it is solidly going into the murderous approach, I'm loving it. And when it gets into the more sappy, emotional stuff, it just kind of tunes me out a little bit. The artwork doesn't work for me on every page, but on some pages it really works for me. So this one's kind of up and down, but so far I'm still enjoying it. Then we got Dark Knights of Steel, Tales of the Three Kingdoms. Tales from the Three Kingdoms. This is a one-shot, $5.99. One story is written by Tom Taylor. The other ones are written by other people. The artwork's pretty decent in all of them. The main stories get art by Christian Ward. That's great. It's the story of Supergirl and Kal-El and Bruce when they're kids and going on an adventure, but it also sets up something that's probably going to develop further in the pages of Dark Knights of Steel, which has been a really fun book. And the backup stories all set up things that are probably going to be important. Overall, I feel like this would be skippable, and I do find it rather obnoxious that they are throwing in this random anthology one-shot in the midst of this 12-issue series, when really that's all it needs to be, is just those 12 issues, right? But it wasn't bad. It was kind of good. I liked it. Then we got Batman Dear Detective number 1, DC Black Label, prestige format. This is weird. Okay, so this is Lee Bermejo's recent variant covers he's been doing for like Detective Comics, I believe, put together in some kind of story. So if you're a fan of Lee Bermejo artwork, I think you're going to like this, because you get his artwork and this printed on this nice big bound book. And at times the images actually do kind of go together sometimes. Like there he is on his rope scaling a building. There he is. There's the rope tied. He's up on the fire escape. There's another one right here. He's going up the fire escape. And then somebody's shooting at him. So it does kind of tell a story, but in other moments it's rather forced. Like when they're like Batman's just reminiscing about his past, so that's why they're doing these, and his family, and that's why they're doing these. So it feels kind of disconnected or whatever. So it's basically an art book that they're trying to sell as a story picture book. And it does have some pages of text, which this whole thing is, there's a code that's spelled out in there, and at the end, it's a letter written to Batman. And at the end, if you put the code together, you find out who the letter's from, and it's pretty dumb. It's pretty cheesy. But it's a cool art book. From Marvel, we have All Out Avengers, issue number 1. This is a brand new Avengers book that nobody asked for, but it's written by Derek Landing with artwork by Greg Land. It's actually not bad for Greg Land. Greg Land started off really strong. Then I think he just got very comfortable lightboxing Penthouse magazines or something. And his artwork kind of lost a little bit of its luster for me over the last like 10, 15 years. But But this isn't bad. It's okay for that. Like, the art's fine, but the story's, like, kind of all over the place. You get thrown in the midst of it. They don't really adequately explain anything. And at the end, we're supposed to believe that there's some kind of high stakes and some kind of important reason to come back for issue number 2. And I just wasn't sold. So, all out Avengers, all out no. How about that from me? But then we got Punisher, issue number 6. Man, I'm loving Punisher. I am loving Punisher. You know, let's be honest. Even the best writers and artists, the best creators that have worked on Punisher, they only got so much to give in them. You know what I'm saying? There's only so much you can do with a book like The Punisher, because all in all, most people are just expecting Frank Castle just mowing down criminals, right? And at times that can get tedious and boring. So you always have different creators come in trying to do something way different, like make him a Frankenstein monster, or making him an avenging angel, or making him a black man, or doing any kind of thing they can think of to get attention on Punisher, but do a Punisher book that's just not about a dude with a bunch of weapons blowing people away. Well, that's usually what we want to see. Here we have a take where Punisher now is like not just part of the Hand, but like the big deal of the Hand. And Ares, who, you know, Frank Castle is his like #1 acolyte, is like, whoa, what's going on? So you get a big climactic battle here. What I'm trying to get around to this point is this. Out of all the crazy ass things that you could do with Frank Castle, Frankencastle, the Sponisher, you know, all that stuff, this is actually working for me. There is a core emotional root. Jason Aaron understands this character. He wrote this character very well in a Punisher Max series not too long ago with Steve Dillon on the artwork. That was a different reality, though, not set in continuity. I'm loving this story. I'm loving the artwork by Jesus Saez. I'm loving the Paul Azaceta. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. But I'm loving his parts of the story. It all works for me thematically. It makes sense why Frank's in this position. And they keep ramping up the stakes. This is stakes. This ain't stakes. You know what I'm saying? Then we get Captain America, Sentinel of Liberty, issue number 4. This book's wearing thin on me, so there's a bit about this book that I find kind of intriguing, that the designers of Captain America's shield, it's some conspiracy, it's some organization that's running things, and they're called this, I don't know, but they have like 5 assassins or something. It's interesting, but it's also kind of dumb. Right? Like, there is an interesting element to the idea of this conspiracy that's like manipulating things behind the scenes, some kind of ancient cabal that's been around since the Revolution in America, guiding things for nefarious purposes, and Captain America's uncovering it and all that stuff. However, it's leading to him to once again question over and over and over again his place in America, what he should represent. What does the America represent? What does the shield represent? It's like breaking and shaking this dude so much to his core just to find out that some bad dude designed his shield with his sigil. Like, I don't know. It's so stupid to me. And it just meanders and goes and goes and goes. I might be dropping out of that one. I was trying to give it a shot. Then we got Moon Knight, issue number 15. This is a movie that my enamor has waned on this one. I really loved, like, the first 6 issues of this book were really good. Dynamic artwork, one-and-done stories, and an overall narrative. It was badass. It was doing some fun, interesting things, especially for a modern Marvel comic. But it's just kind of gotten into this, like, cycle of just a lot of talking, like, we're just now getting to the idea that there are 3 personalities within this dude, and like we're just now talking about this like it's an important thing, like everybody's just learning it. It's losing me, and I loved this book so much, but once again it kind of goes to something in my lifetime. And I haven't read the original Moon Knight stuff by like Doug Minch, I think, and Bill Sienkiewicz. I haven't read that stuff. I got the omnibus. I plan on jumping into that one day. But most Moon Knight series just do not keep my attention or interest past like 6, 10, 12 issues. Even the Warren Ellis run, which I loved, which led into the Brian Wood run that I loved, and the Cullen Bunn run just is like 12 issues what you're getting. You know, like what was it, Charlie Houston, was he the one that did it, or was that Hudlin? Whoever did it during Civil War with the David Finch covers and stuff, that just couldn't keep my interest either. I don't know. And then the Bendis one, Bendis and Malieve on a Moon Knight book, that was like a dream comic for Robbie 20 years ago, and man, that sucked. Anyway, new Fantastic Four, issue number 4. I appreciate the throwback. I appreciate the look back at this more innocent time when Walt Simonson was writing the Fantastic Four. We got Peter David here, but they're telling a tale about the new Fantastic Four. You know, Hulk, Wolverine, Ghost Rider, and Spider-Man having to be assembled again for some kind of threat. But man, this story is dumb. His story is dumb, and the artwork is not good. So I'm buying them because I am that Fantastic Four guy, and I'm cool with that. I accept that, and I understand. But this is just dumb. This is dumb, man, and not even fun. Then we got Alien, a brand new Alien #1, but still written by Philip Kennedy Johnson. Now we've got Julius Otaw on the artwork. It's all right. I mean, there's a nice little scene of some alien carnage, but then outside of that, just a bunch of talking. It's an interesting enough setup. Basically, there's this colony of outlaw androids that the humans go to find, and they think they're going to try to like start another skirmish with them, but they need their help because, you know, oh man, we're Wayland Yutani. We were once again, our experiment's gone out of control and everything. It's just the same fucking story over and over. I don't know. Aliens. I'm done with it. We're moving on to Image next. And from Image, we have Antioch #1. This is a brand new comic. However, this is a second volume, basically, to Frontiersmen. So this is basically, if you're into Frontiersmen, for some reason, they have changed the name of the book. They're focusing in on another character in addition to the character of Frontiersman, because at the end of Frontiersman, spoilers, Frontiersman got arrested. He's a superhero. This superhero world is being developed, and Frontiersman was pretty good. It was pretty solid. But at the end of that book, you know, he got arrested, and it promised that the series would continue in another form. And here's Antioch. It's focusing on this other character. It's kind of intriguing, but kind of like, I don't know, a little overwrought, a little overdone. Just didn't really quite work for me. And then Frontiersman in prison is a focus here, and there's some interesting things going on there. The artwork is different here, though, so it doesn't quite sell me on the artistic side, and it didn't quite win me over like Frontiersman did. Frontiersman was a book that had a really interesting world, and that was what was interesting to me, kind of like in an Astro City type way, but the stories didn't hit me quite like those did, and this one was the weaker of all these Frontiersman-esque issues so far, so I thought that was just okay. Then we got Twig, issue #5. This is the final issue for now, because more Twig is promised, and I'm excited, because this book was awesome. And this is a really satisfying conclusion. Amazing artwork, heartwarming, charming, absolutely amazing. This is a great all-ages book. Scotty Young, Kyle Strom, Jean-Francois Beaulieu, and Nate Picos have nailed it. This is absolutely great. I think kids would love this. I think teenagers would love this. I think adults would love this. I think the elderly would love this. I think aliens would love this. I thought this book was amazing, and I was really curious, how are you going to tell this cute, charming story with impact in just 5 issues? Because at a certain point, it felt like they weren't going to be able to do it. Man, all those pieces clicked so perfectly fine for this conclusion. That was dope. Then we got Metal Society issue #5. This is also a conclusion from Image this week, from Top Cow specifically. We got Zach Kaplan on the writing, Guilherme Balbi on the artwork. I loved this final issue. So Metal Society is about this society in which humanity has died out, but robots, AI, have taken over. They now run and are the dominant life form on Earth. At some point in the distant future, they decide they're going to be good guys, and they're going to use their ability to clone and their ability through genetics to bring back the human race. And now humans are kind of like this slave class of like labor and stuff like that, right? And they're fighting for their rights. And so they set up this whole match between a robot fighter and a human fighter, and they're going to have this match to just settle it all. And throughout this whole thing, they've been teasing this fight, but they've been giving us this backstory that's very rich and also world building, which I love. And Zach Kaplan really doing a great job of painting the situation, not casting a judgment, like just painting it. It's so refreshing to read a book like that. And then here we are in the final issue. You're expecting the big fight, you get the big fight, and it has twists and turns, and the way it ends, I thought, was incredibly resonating, nuanced, and fantastic. They nailed the ending on Metal Society. This was awesome. Then we got A Town Called Terror, issue #6. Also a concluding chapter from Image this week, but they do promise that this book will come back, and I really hope so, because Szymon Kudranski's artwork, bold, graphic, memorable. It leaves an impression. I absolutely love this book. I thought it was amazing. It's written by Steve Niles, and there's not too much to the story. It's about this dude who grew up in a town of monsters. You're not allowed to leave. He manages to get out, doesn't want to go back. He doesn't have the greatest relationship with his dad, who, of course, the whole town are monsters, you know, remember that. There's like this Frankenstein family and all that kind of shit. So it's got cool stuff, and then he goes back and he has to confront his father, and this is the big final confrontation. It was a really satisfying concluding chapter. This is another one where I was like, how are they going to wrap up the story very nice and neat and tidy in just 6 issues? But in the last issue, it set up a perfect ending, and they nailed it. There's some really solid endings from Image. Wow, nailing it. Then we got Star Hinge, Book 1, The Dragon and the Boar, issue number 3 by Liam Sharp. Once again, artwork is just gorgeous. Some of the concepts are really intriguing, but the execution of the story never gets compelling, never engages me, but I can just stare at this artwork forever. And there are some stories, and it starts hitting a point where we feel like we're about to get a good narrative flow, but I just don't know if that's what we're going to get from this book. So it's a little bit disappointing, but the artwork is so gorgeous, I'm going to keep reading it. I won't keep reading it. Then we got Sweet Paprika, issue number 12, a satisfying enough conclusion. The problem with Sweet Paprika is this has been a fun, crude, irreverent, sexy, charming book, but it just overstayed its welcome. It overstayed its welcome probably by 6 issues, in my opinion. I think this should have been half the length because they just kind of retreaded things over and over. And this is a satisfying conclusion, but it's an obvious conclusion. And when you've been stretching the story out for as long as they have been, especially over these last 6 months, it just makes the obvious conclusion keep feeling so far away. And once it happens, it just loses its impact for me. So Sweet Paprika was a book I was really high on at first. And, you know, I don't know. They just overstayed its welcome. Then we got Spawn 333, a great issue of Spawn last issue where we had a big confrontation between Sin, which is the new form of Cagliostro, and Spawn, Al Simmons. And now they are set up to be like the opposing forces of this big war that's building up, probably to 350. If I had to guess, maybe 400, if they're really planning long term. So this one's a little bit more of a step down, but you got lots of different things that are starting to move in place around the story to amp up the momentum. Spawn likes to kind of take its time and just settle for a while, and before it ramps back up again, it feels like we're in a settling motion right now, but at the same time, like I said, moving those pieces around, getting some things from point A to point B, ready for things to explode. So it was an okay issue of Spawn. Okay. Then we got Image, the 30th anniversary anthology, issue number 5. I dropped out on reading this because I was just finding it hard to kind of keep track of all the little stories. That's a problem when you're reading so much, and some of them are anthologies that have a bunch of little short stories. You know, it's kind of hard to remember them, right? But I do like the Scotty Young little comic strip in here and all that stuff. But I read this in particular because Joe Casey has a story in here, and it's Dutch. Yeah, and that's really cool. And then there's a Royal City story in here that teases up the next volume of Royal City. Royal City is a Jeff Lemire written and illustrated book that I absolutely adore, and I'm really excited for its return. So I had to check that out. That was cool. I skipped the rest of the stories, though, to be honest. Then from Boom Studios, we have the penultimate issue of Once and Future. This is issue number 29, only one more issue. And this has been a book that I absolutely love, but the last several issues have felt very weirdly paced and clunky, right? Like they're making these weird skips in time. It's almost like the book was meant to go a little bit longer, but they realized with the way sales were going that they needed to wrap it up around issue 30 or something like that. And the last few issues feels like it's 6 to 8 issues of stuff was shoved into like the last 3 issues, and it kind of made it feel very clunky and disjointed and jumpy in time and stuff, right? But now, that's all gone, because now I feel like we're getting the conclusion, and this perfectly sets up the conclusion. There are some really interesting moments that I did not see coming that, in hindsight, should seem a bit obvious. Dan Mora's artwork is amazing. Tamara Bonvillain's coloring is amazing. Once and Future's back, baby. Just in time for the final issue. I hope they nail that final issue, because this one really promises a very exciting conclusion. Then we got E-Ratic Volume 2, Recharged. That's right, E-Ratic is back. I loved E-Ratic when it first came out from AWA, Upshot. It's written and illustrated by Carrie Andrews, and it's basically Carrie Andrews doing Spider-Man. And, you know, being able to do it the way it is. So this is a kid, he's got superpowers. He can unleash them for like 10 minutes a day. They're electrically based, but his electricity bolts are kind of like web shooters. So like whatever Spider-Man does, he can do with like electricity. It is straight up Spider-Man, but it's like an unedited Spider-Man reboot from Carrie Andrews, and it works. And it's been forever since the last volume of this, so I was really nervous. I was like, man, am I going to remember these characters? Am I going to remember this world? Sucked right back into it. I love the artwork. Very expressive, very energetic, really fun, cool stuff. I'm trying to find a really dope page for you. Here we go. Really cool, fun stuff. I like it. Nice, classic, vibing feeling comics. Classic vibing feeling. Okay, last line is a new one from Aftershock Comics. This one was just kind of all right. It kind of was weird. There's like too much going on every single page. The pace was incredibly frantic, and it just never gelled for me. But it's about this woman. She drives like one of those subway trains or whatever, and somebody gets pushed in front of the train, and she hits the dude, but the security cameras show nobody pushed him, but she knows she saw somebody push him, and it uncovers this like conspiracy thing going on, and there's this underground London agency that I don't know. There was so much going on. It was so frantic, so rushed, so just off the wall. It was hard to retain anything from this book. So last line did not work for me. Then we got Highball. It's a new one from Ahoy Comics, and it was all right. So Highball, the entire premise is this dude is like the best shot in the galaxy. So he's like one of the best dudes to be sent out and take care of business in the galaxy when they need to, you know, kill some aliens or some shit, right? But he's a lush. He's drunk all the time. That's the whole bit. That's it. It's just a joke. It just keeps repeating itself over and over and over again, and it drags and drags and drags. And drags and drags and drags and drags and drags and drags. Kind of like Rings of Power. Then we got Star Trek issue 400. How did that work? Well, it turns out this is the 400th issue of Star Trek published by IDW. So that's cool. So it's a little celebration of Star Trek. You got some cool covers. But you got little stories that tie into everything. You got a piece that ties into Picard. You got a piece that ties into the original series. You got a Deep Space Nine story. You got a story in here from Lansing and Kelly. They're going to be launching a new Star Trek #1. It feels like it's going to be like Avengers Forever, but for Star Trek, where they're pulling different characters from different Trekkie shows and at different times and periods or something. So there's a setup for that in there, and that was pretty interesting. Aside from that, though, they're all kind of just throwaway stories, and most of them just didn't really land very well. And so the Picard story is written by Will Wheaton, by the way. And I just want to show you this. And, you know, as much as I like to hate on Wesley Crusher, I get it. It's fine. I don't have a problem with Will Wheaton. But Will Wheaton does not need to be writing comics. Do you see this? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 panels on this fucking page. And you see all them words. Bro, you ain't Alan Moore. Anyway, let's move on. To Dark Horse, we have Shock Shop #1. This is an interesting book. I really liked it. It's kind of like in the vein of Tales from the Crypt. It's a horror anthology book. There's 2 stories, and it's a flip book, so that's fun. A flip book, you get to flip it. I got that Francisco Francavilla cover, but both stories are written by Cullen Bunn. One of them has artwork by Leila Lees, and that story was really cool. It's about a single dad who gets a new house, and it seems haunted, and his kids are over, and they're having fun till they're not, and that was really cool. And then the flip story was really more emotional. It's about this this group of friends that are out camping, and there's this one couple there that are going through like a really tough time in their marriage, and they probably shouldn't be there because all their friends are getting into all their jam and all that kind of stuff. That sounded like an interesting way to describe it. Anyway, the artwork by Danny Luckert in that story was awesome, and it had an interesting enough ending, but the premise of that other story with Leila Lees, that one hooked me a lot better at the end. I thought this was fun. If you're into something spooky and cool and It's interesting. Check that out. Then we have Survival Street, issue number 2. I wasn't quite sold on issue number 1, so I wanted to come into issue number 2. It's basically what if the Muppets on Sesame Street wound up and they got publicly funded television gets canceled because now corporations are private citizens and they run everything or something like that. And so now the outcast Muppets of Sesame Street are revolutionaries for the fight for freedom against tyranny on the street. So it's got a great sense of fun about it. So I don't know if I'm completely sold on it, but it's not a bad comic. It's a really interesting premise. But there's just something about it that does feel maybe a bit too on the nose with some of the stuff that's going on here, but at the same time, it's kind of amusing. So there you go. Then we got Mind Management Bootleg, issue number 3. This starts spoiling some things, I think, for me. I never finished the original Mind Management. I do like Mind Management. I got the first volume. I met Matt Kent. He did a cool sketch for me. He's a super cool dude. Super cool dude. Matt Kent's awesome. So I like this book, and I like the artwork, but it's starting to kind of spoil things for me. The artwork in this issue is really cool. Each issue is a different artist, and there's all kinds of stuff where they really utilize the form of comics and the format of this book, and everything is a part of the story, even the alleged script in the back, things like that. So it's interesting and it's cool, but it's starting, I think, to spoil some things, and I don't know if I want to continue on. I think I need to make the time finally and do the reread and finally finish Mind Management. I'm sure Brianiac would agree that I should do that. Artist Elite presents issue number 2. Didn't win me over quite as much as issue number 1. I liked the Brett Booth story there. The Ali Garza one was alright. And this one, you got the start of the Ben Templesmith story, Dark Skulls. That was my favorite. Then there's this one, Belong, by Freddie Prinze Prinze Jr. I almost said Freddie Williams III. That was pretty decent. And then the Seraph 7 one was really whack. But there's so little to each of these stories that it's not really getting me, you know? And I feel like, just like with the Image anthology, this is going to be something that over time I'm going to kind of forget what's going on in certain of these stories. But there are pieces of it that I'm liking, so I'm probably going to stick with it for the time being. From Black Caravan, an imprint of Scout, we have Blade in the Dark. This was an interesting comic. It had really cool artwork. It's like a black and white kind of samurai tale, but it also involves monsters. And the opening of the book is really cool. And it's mostly just like splash pages. There's just 2 or 3 panel pages without clear, distinct borders, but it's got monsters and stuff in it too. So there's things in here that worked for me. And it was interesting, but it wasn't 100% there. There was something off about this, especially when we get towards the middle of the story. But it's interesting and intriguing, and I'll definitely be back for that. Then we got Phantasmagoria, issue number 1. I was looking forward to this one, and I love the artwork in this book. It's gnarly. It's got some creepy things. It's got some death. It's got some gore. But overall, the story just kind of felt a little dull, a little boring, a little formulaic. It's a bit Hammer Films-ish. So it kind of has that vibe, and in comic book form, I don't know if that works for me, but it didn't completely entice me, and I found certain bits of the story a bit confusing to follow. Wait, what? Oh, that's a different family. This is a different case we're on. So that was a little disjointing, but it was okay. It was okay. Then we have New Rat City. This is from Scout Comics. It's part of Non-Stop. That means they're going to release this first issue and then no more issues. It's going to be a trade paperback that will be released later. But you get to check out the first issue. That's kind of the point of it. It was all right. It's like this New York City that's like overrun by like rats. And so like it's a big deal. So being in the pest control service is like a big deal or whatever, and there's other stuff going on. I mean, this book, it just didn't quite work for me. It's got some cool concepts, it's playing with some cool ideas, but the artwork really kind of feels stiff and it kind of hinders it just a little bit for me. So New Rat City wasn't quite my jam right there. Then we got The Ninjettes number 1. This is from the pages of Jennifer Blood. I was a little confused in this one. Basically what I get from this is that there are these personality tests that high schoolers are taking, and certain women who score a certain way on this personality test, they get ganked by this organization and then trained to become the Ninjettes, like ninja assassins. And one of them shouldn't be there. I don't know. It didn't really work for me. Artwork's okay, but the book itself didn't really work for me. Then we got 007 issue number 2, written by Philip Kennedy Johnson. I like this book. I think it's pretty solid. Dynamite does pretty good work on the James Bond titles, but Philip Kennedy Johnson seems like his style is really going to lend itself to this. And one of the things that I liked about this is because we're dealing with the aftermath of the death of a 00 agent. So you actually get to see a little bit more of an emotional side of not just Bond, but other 00 agents. Like in this issue, they get to have this moment where they gather together to kind of have a drink for their lost comrade. And it sets up this whole thing with M and this conspiracy and this mission, and I'm enjoying it. I think it's pretty solid. The artwork's decent. It's not the best. It's probably not as dynamic or as action-packed as a James Bond book should be, but it does get the job done. So that's what I read this week. What are you reading? What are you digging? Let us know. My pick of the week, Flashpoint Beyond, but I pretty much thought DC had a very solid week. Marvel, I didn't really like any of them except for The Punisher. I do like The Punisher. Antioch was disappointing. Twig, a bunch of great conclusions from Image this week, like Twig, Metal Society, Town Called Terror, Sweet Paprika just overstayed its welcome. Star Hinge, beautiful artwork, cool concepts, but just not completely winning me over. Once and Future, now that they've shoved all the penultimate stuff into I don't know what I was going to say. Once and Future, I think we're really set up for a great conclusion. That was a great issue. I'm super pumped that E-Ratic is back. I would skip Last Line and Highball if I was you, but Shock Shop just might be up your alley. So there you go. That's what I read. That's what I'm thinking. What are you thinking? Let us know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for checking out the video. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and join us over at patreon.com/PCP if you want to help support the channel. I've been Rockin' Robbie Billups. Thanks for rocking with us. Station. Keep on reading. Pop, pop. Boom.